This week we're reviewing Groundhog Day. We're going to start off with a spoiler-free review and then do a full discussion afterwards. All right, so as a thank you to our audience for helping us get to 75 subscribers on YouTube, we're doing another retro review. This time, because it's that time of year, we're doing Groundhog Day. And Groundhog Day is a comedy that was directed by Harold Ramis, and it's written by Harold Ramis and Danny Rubin. It stars Bill Murray, Andie MacDowell, and Groundhog Day. The spoiler-free review of the plot is that Phil Connors, played by Bill Murray, is a weatherman in sort of, I think he's in Pennsylvania.
But he's in is he in Philadelphia? Or
yeah, I think he's in Philadelphia. Yeah.
So, and he goes to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania to cover the groundhog coming out of the ground. And he's not such a great person. He's kind of got some personality quirks.
He's a jerk.
He's a jerk.
Yeah. He's a jerk.
He's a jerk. And what happens is he does a report on the Groundhog Day, wakes up the next day and he finds out it is still Groundhog Day. Only he realizes that. And hilarity ensues, basically. So, and I think we had all seen it before.
I'd seen it before.
Yeah, I'd seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've seen it quite a few times. So Justin, what do you think of Groundhog Day?
I liked it, and I've seen it. I think the first time I saw it was actually in college. I think it actually took me a long time before I finally got around to seeing it. And I heard about it, and yeah, it's great. I mean, it's just one of those pop culture things that you kind of have to see because it there's lots of references to it and stuff, and it's quotable the way everything Bill Murray does is quotable. But no, it's great. Yeah, it's interesting because I think that a lot of movies, you're like, oh, I wanted to see some character development or whatever. This movie is nothing but character development. And it's only one character, right? So it's kind of cool. So I think we should talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah. So in the spoiler section, personally, what I think is that you think you're going in to get one movie and you actually end up with a different movie, which is, I think, what'll be fun to talk about in the spoiler segment. So, but Steve, what do you think Groundhog Day?
Yeah. So when I was coming over here, I was trying to think what my angle on Groundhog Day was going to be, because it's been so talked about, and it's such a celebrated film. That's what more is there to say about Groundhog Day, actually? And like Justin, I saw it originally in college, so it took a long time again to see it. And I was thinking about it. I thought, well, you know what? I think I'm going to declare that this is the greatest movie of the 1980s. In fact, one of the very few great movies in the 1980s, because a decade not known for great movies, which I'm sure will not be a controversial statement at all.
Oh, please direct your mail to
the year 1984. Would like to disagree with you. I think
was it Raiders?
Yeah. But then, to my dismay, I checked Wikipedia, and it turns out it actually came out in 1993. so much, which it's really surprising. It looks so 80s.
Totally does, yeah.
And so we should chat more about that. So anyway, so much for that. But I love the film. I love the concept. I love that concept overall. Before I watched this film, one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation was Cause and Effect, which did this basically very similar idea, but in 1992, so the year before. It's the same basic premise, but with a very different, it's not used as a vehicle for character development in the way that Groundhog Day was, which I think is the genius of Groundhog Day. But I love the idea of being able to keep retrying, the same sequence of events, and I feel like the movie does such a great job of using that premise to its fullest extent.
Yeah,
and I love when films are able to do that. So yeah, I think it's great. It's funny. It has wonderful character development, and it has Bill Murray, and so what else more do you need?
Yeah. This is, I think, one of my favorite movies. I just like it on so many different levels. Some of the things that occurred to me, it's really a movie about details, because you start to kind of get into this rhythm of he's noticing these things from day to day, like this thing drops and this person says that thing and there's a gust of wind, and you kind of get into this thinking, at least for a small period of time, about wow, does that happen during the course of my day? Should I be paying more attention to what people are saying and what their backstory is? So I really dig that. And the other thing I think is really brilliant about the way that Phil Connors' character is handled is that the thing that usually is horrible about these kind of movies is you feel like the protagonist is just a complete idiot. They don't get it, right? They're just, for some reason they can't clue into the fact that this happened yesterday, and it feels like it takes them 4 times as long as it should for them to understand what's going on. And he immediately starts to freak out. He's like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then like, I kind of feel like he goes to the places like I would go. Like, oh, I'm probably just misperceiving this. And it's like, this is exactly the same as yesterday. You know, and he goes through the steps and he's like, it's like, well, initially he, you know, does some really stupid stuff. And then he tries some not so stupid stuff. And he kind of goes through that. It's believable as a way to react to the situation. As ridiculous as it is. I also really like, I think one of my favorite things about it is this kind of story is great, which is that it's like 90% conventional real world things happening. In other words, there's no superheroes or anything like that. There's a little sci-fi twist, which is really a lot of fun, which is also the thing I liked about The One I Love. So they take, you know, this very concrete thing and there's this interesting little twist. I think one of my favorite aspects of it, and something I like about movies in general, is that you go in, if you haven't, at this point it's kind of hard because so many people have seen it, talked about it, but I think if you don't know anything about the movie, you think you're getting one thing when you go in, and it ends up being a much bigger thing, I think. And to the degree that where he ends up and like his journey from like his sort of like jerkishness to start, where he ends up, I think is something I kind of mentally reference, like, you know, ways to maybe be a better person, you know, in a way to kind of like contrast that sort of jerky thing with where he ends up eventually. I think I referenced that. And there's so many funny moments, and, you know, it's some really like genuine, believable acting with the two of them. And it's weird in that it's almost gotten to the point where, you know, the movie has become so synonymous with the holiday that you almost don't separate them. You know, for people that have seen the movie, like, you know, if you're not talking about it, you're always kind of like, I think, at least for me, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, it's Groundhog Day. We should watch Groundhog Day. You know, it's like, which is weird. It doesn't happen that often. And maybe just because it's not like Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever.
I don't know. I feel like in my head, when you just say Groundhog Day out of context, I'm like, oh yeah, like your day's repeating like over and over.
Right. Yeah.
And it never occurs to me. It's like, oh yeah, it's a thing where the groundhog's using shadow. Like, that's weird. But the movie's great.
Yeah. And the phenomenon, that's actually a great point. Is like the phenomenon of like repeating over and over again in like popular culture, that kind of has overtaken the groundhog part of it, right? Like that's what people think. It's like, I feel like I'm living Groundhog Day. It's like people know, at least in, you know, America, people know what you mean when you say that. It's just, I mean, there's so many elements, and it's you keep peeling back the layers, and even like the little stories that that build with like the scenes he has with particular characters that just show up once in the movie, like in themselves are interesting little vignettes. Like early on, he's hanging out with these two guys at the bar, and you know, that's a little story. And then he talks to somebody else, and that's another story. And there's some characters, one in particular, that he meets early on in the movie, and you kind of think he's just a background extra. And Phil even kind of ignores him. And then as the movie gets further in, you discover that like that actually has a profound effect on him, the presence of that character. So there's just tons of stuff like that. And I don't know, it's just such a great movie. I really like it.
Yeah, going back to your comment about how it's sort of unfortunate how everyone has sort of heard of, you know, knows the premise, even if they haven't seen the film. I feel like another example of this, suffers from exactly the same problem, is The Truman Show. And these are both films which I would love to have been able to watch them the first time. Not have any idea. I feel like both you can watch, and for a while you just think it's, you know, what's just any old. I mean, you have no idea where the movie's really going. Right. And the first act of both of them, you can watch and enjoy and have no idea how the whole world's gonna be turned upside down. As soon as the next day happens, or you know, and I mean, it's so unfortunate, you know, for these classics, how, you know, like I don't know. I mean, I wonder how much of that power will be, you know, is lost because of the fact that they're just the premise is so well known. I don't know.
And it's weird how The Truman Show is kind of an aversion of that, right? Like it's like in Groundhog Day, he's the only one who knows it's happening. And
The Truman Show is the only one who doesn't know it's happening.
Which is crazy, you know? And it you would think that there would at least be some level of inspiration, you know, for The Truman Show from Groundhog Day, because a lot of the concepts are similar. But yeah, I mean, I really feel like you need to see Groundhog Day. Like it's just such a well-made movie, and there's so many concepts that are sort of interesting to think about that even now I kind of sort of roll over my head from time to time, and it's hilarious, and I mean it's fantastic.
Yeah,
so highly recommended for me.
It's aged well, despite the fact that it feels very, like I said, it feels very 80s.
Yeah,
despite being nice. I mean, was the early 90s that 80s? I feel like movies just made a few years later don't feel nearly so 80s. You know,
it does.
Like Truman Show was like what, 1996?
I don't know. Yeah.
I think it was probably completely wrong, but I feel like I just. I don't know, maybe I need to rewatch some of these movies, and probably they'll all seem really 80s now.
They might, yeah.
I was just shocked that it was not like made in 1983 or something. You know, like,
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's supposed to be like a small town, you know, and like maybe that's like part of some of it too. Is that like they have like older fashions or something?
Yeah,
like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the other thing is that there's some interesting details about the thing I noticed after just rewatching it, and this might be completely accidental, but when he's sitting in there's no like plot issue here, but when he's sitting in the cafe talking to Andy McDowell, there's like a whole wall of clocks behind him, and it had always just been background noise to me. And I don't know if this is intentional, but the clocks are not all set at the same time. Like they're set at wildly different times.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like one of them is set at like 6:30, one set at like 3 o'clock, one set at 9. And I was like staring at that. I was like, they must have been aware of that because it was in the shot. I mean, it was like directly behind him. I was like, wow, I don't know what I'm supposed to take away from this. But there's so many interesting details like that. And like, you know, some of them he calls out, but some of them are just sort of like, you notice as the viewer, he doesn't interact with like all the characters that are reoccurring, but you just kind of like start to pick up on like, oh yeah, that guy was here yesterday doing this thing. And like, yeah, so fantastically dense and like surprisingly great movie. So check it out. And I think we're going to talk about some spoiler stuff because there's some fun like details that happen after that. But let's talk about ways people can contact us. So you can always reach us on Twitter at Low Earth Show. You can email us at lowearthorbit or feedback at lowearthorbit.fm. If you want to check out sort of our archive of shows we've done, even the ones before we did video, and the notes for each of those shows, you can go to lowearthorbit.fm and everything's listed there. All the ways you can subscribe to us are listed there as well. And we have a phone number.
We do. So we have a voicemail line now. So if you call a particular number that I will look up just now, you can leave us a voicemail about Groundhog Day or about anything else we reviewed, or just something that you want to tell us about that you've seen recently. Leave us a voicemail. So the number for that is area code 573-880-4420.
If you don't get through, keep calling.
Yeah, I think it's just like the robot, like the text to speech voice there. Now we'll have to record a better like greeting for the voicemail line.
So I think one of the things an idea I had is if what we could do is tweet out the thing that we're about to review, and if people want to call in and toss in their review, we'll put it in the show.
That'd be cool too.
But you're free to review something that's already gone up too, if you want to, and we'll put it up.
Totally.
And then YouTube, of course, which is why we're reviewing this. YouTube.com/LowEarthShow. We've got all the video episodes up there and some surprisingly popular episodes all of a sudden. Like the Kentucky Route Zero Act 3 video has just gotten crazy popular.
I mean, and Act 4 hasn't come out or anything, right?
No. So one thing that happened is that they had I guess they were just a little interlude kind of thing happened where they had you know how they have these little contained games? I think they released another one. I forget what it's called, but they had a phone. Like you would call a phone number, ironically, and like there was like a IVR kind of thing where you like interact with the game that way. And then they sold the phone.
Wait.
Wasn't this a while ago?
This is a real phone?
Well, it was a phone number.
Oh, so you call a phone number.
Yeah.
So you'd be playing the game on your like laptop.
No, totally separate.
Oh.
So it's something in the same universe where you would actually call in and like interact, like point and click with a phone, I guess. So like, or choose your own adventure. But they had like a physical phone that was somehow involved in the plot. I didn't play it, so I don't know the details. But they sold it on eBay.
Yeah.
So like there was all this like, you know, it's like all the other stuff they do. It's just so crazy and like unique and, you know, kind of perplexing. But they had a physical phone that they sold that was part of the story. So, but I haven't played it. I don't know what the details are. But I think that's part of the reason why it kind of like sparked some interest. So,
well, no, so there was a game. I don't know if it came out or if it was just like a concept or whatever. But I feel like there was a game that was kind of like this, where it's like you would sign up for the game, and I think you would give it your phone number, and like the game would call you and like send you text messages like from the characters in the game, and like you would interact. It was like an adventure game,
I know what you're
like a
talking
murder
about.
Mystery or something. And like
and it was like 5 years ago or something like that. It was something pretty recent.
It's a little older than that, I think. I think I read about it in PC Gamer magazine, so that tells you how old I think it is.
I think somebody did like another riff on it pretty recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Maybe they did. I don't know. I mean, with like, you know, Twilio or something.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
The tools are there to do it. Yeah.
Okay, well, look at that. That's fascinating.
Didn't Lost do some of these things like that? Like when back when it was airing, where there was like these whole like outside of the game, like, you know, fake corporations and websites and, you know, hidden clues and phone numbers and like there was
like the whole alternate reality game.
Yeah,
sort of that was like, popular for a while.
Yeah. I mean, I think a bunch of shows actually did it, but it's a similar idea where I think it was across many different, you know, forms of media.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome. Anyway, so youtube.com/lower show. There's a lot of stuff on there that people have been picking up on. Cabin Pressure continues to be absurdly popular. And, if you haven't seen some of the episodes, you can go back and maybe watch some of them because they're a lot of fun. Okay, so on to spoilers. Okay, spoilers for Groundhog Day. So one of the things that I think is really interesting and really subtle is about, I don't know, like third of the way through the movie or something like that. He obviously his goal is to, get together with Andy McDowell's character. And initially...
Actually, does that start out as his goal? Not to like nitpick like your...
That's interesting. Well, okay, so fair enough. So I think his original goal is to like get out of this crazy place, right?
Yeah.
But I think even before, I think he was always interested in, right? Like when he's looking at the weather map and she's like playing around with the weather map, he's kind of like, it's kind of like it's like it's interesting, And I think it seemed, the feeling you get, at least the feeling I get, is that his character maybe had been through something, or he just wasn't really like engaged in life, and he encounters this girl who is like really playful about things and really enjoys life, and I think he kind of locks onto that, even if he doesn't necessarily have any. I mean, even fairly early on, he starts to kind of like pursue her in a really like jerky way. But then after I think day 3 or 4 or something like that, he starts to like take a genuine interest in what she's interested in, but for the wrong reasons.
Well, that's not a genuine interest.
That's
right?
what I was going to say. I don't think it is a genuine interest.
He puts in, okay, fair enough. So he puts in effort to sort of memorize the thing that she's interested in to sort of like trick her, right? And even does it to that other girl, forget the girl, Nancy Taylor.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's like, Nancy, what was your high school teacher? And that whole thing. And you're kind of like, oh, he's even more of a jerk now, right? but so he starts to, it's funny, there's this weird moment where he starts to like memorize some of the things that Andy McDowell's character is interested in. It's like French poetry and like say a prayer to world peace and all these other kind of things. And then
no white chocolate, no fudge.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then he starts to kind of like actually have, at least for a small period of time, have like a genuine relationship with her and kind of be more spontaneous, like the snowball fight and like he's
I still don't think that was genuine though.
Well,
so I think the cool thing about the interesting thing about the snowball fight is that we see that scene twice, and the first time it like really works because it is spontaneous.
That's
and
what
the
I
second
mean.
time it absolutely doesn't work because he's trying to like
to
force it again,
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And it's like awkward to watch because he's like pretending to be playful, and it's like it's like hard to look at. So it's weird because he's basically gaming her, right? And then he does have that spontaneous moment with the snowball thing. You're kind of like, oh, okay, and you kind of almost feel like this is approaching the arc of the movie, and then you realize, oh, he's still just gaming her, just in a totally different way. So the interesting thing is that like he's basically just gaming her, right? And he realizes, I think he hits a point where like he can't figure it out. Like he can't figure out exactly, he's pushing it so hard that she's like getting uncomfortable about it. But he hits this point where he's like, he realizes that hyper focused on just trying to game her isn't working. So then he goes off and starts doing these other things. He learns how to play piano, and eventually you find out he's learned all kinds of crazy stuff, like the ice sculpting and like. And
I think all that he does for himself. I think he just does it because he's like, well, screw it. If I'm going to be here for however long, I'm going to at least like take advantage of it.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating because he
try out every way to commit suicide.
Oh my gosh! When he goes down to like the lobby and gets a toaster
That's the
with
best.
a toast still in it. and then they don't show him like actually get electrocuted. They show the lights turn off. And oh my god! That part was like, it's kind of tragic, but at the same time it's just too funny because only Bill Murray could make killing yourself look like something really hilarious.
Yeah. And the whole like driving the groundhog.
Oh my god, driving the groundhog is the best.
The best line too.
Just the side of your eyes. Yeah. Just use your mirrors.
I forget what the exact line was, but they're like, he goes over the edge, and they're like, he's probably okay. Maybe not okay. But it's funny, on the deeper level or whatever. By the end, it's interesting because you realize that. So actually, one interesting thing that there was an interview with Harold Ramis. He's passed away now, but a few years ago, they kind of asked him like, well, how long did this actually play out, from his perspective? And I think the number he eventually settled on was like 40 years, which is crazy. But then you think about it, it's like, well, he learned like a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like he somehow like learned medicine and like to how to play piano really well and like ice sculpting, and like your brain starts to go like, wow, what, there were huge gaps of time here where he learned all kinds of stuff.
Well, if you just count the number of times that like he gets slapped, like there's that one little montage where he gets slapped like 20 times in a row. Well, there's a month right there, basically, right? Like, and then I think they're like going to the movies. He like steals the money and he like rolls up in like whatever that was, like the nice car, and has like the crazy like weird like cowboy outfit on or whatever. But he makes some offhanded comment about the movies, like I've seen it 100 times. And I'm like, oh man, true, it's like 100 days like right there probably. Like,
So the interesting thing to me is that he starts off, you know, you get this impression like he's basically in hell, right? Like he's stuck in some sort of like, he's getting punishment for being a jerk. That's one interpretation, right? Initially you think, oh, of course, like he's a jerk and they're going to keep reminding him as he's a jerk, and like it's never going to work out for him because he's doing all these things and nothing's working, right? But the thing you realize, at least for me, what I realized at the end is that it's actually kind of like a gift, right? Like he could have gone his entire life, lived the rest of his life, been a jerk, and had no opportunity to correct it, right? But you kind of realize that like given an infinite amount of time, like he's able to kind of like become an amazingly good person, and as a result he's able to have like a real relationship and things like that. And I think that's part of the curveball that the movie throws at you, where you kind of think it's going to be just a comedy, and they're going to just, you know, kind of like, oh, he's going to get shot a lot of times and he's going to fall off things and he's going to die all these times, and then it'll just sort of like he'll start memorizing things and then he'll work it all out. But it's like that doesn't actually play out that way, because he learns that just sort of rote memorizing people's things and trying to trick them, it just won't work. Like, so he has to actually become a better person. Yeah, totally. And actually ends up being, there's a key line right before it like ends, right? He says something like, I'm happy now. He realizes that he's actually happy with what he has, and that's where it goes off. So
yeah, I think it's a testament to the film and to Bill Murray that you actually believe it. Yeah, I mean, he's such a jerk at the beginning, and to actually feel like he genuinely has changed, and that was possible for this character, and it's not just like, you know, them trying to tie up the loose ends at the end of the film to give a happy ending. Yeah, like there's so many times. I mean, there's so many films, you know, where that, you know, the neat bow at the end, you know, like sort of undoes the film because it just, you know, it's too neat. And here it actually, you know, it does actually work, and you believe it, and you feel like the same character who actually has learned. And I noticed that more the second watching through than the first time, just because I think of some other movies, I am blanking on them now, but I feel like we're just, you know, a lesser actor wouldn't have been able to pull that off.
Yeah.
Actually, so it reminds me, did you guys see the Nicolas Cage movie Next? I think that's the one where he could see like 60 seconds into the future or whatever it was.
I can't,
like,
after you showed me that Nicolas Cage thing.
Well, so you weren't here earlier when we were waiting for you to come over. I showed him this video. This is College Humor video about Nicolas Cage's agent and like all the horrible movies that Cage like agrees to do. It's like, no, you need to be more selective. You have to start saying no to some of these things. They're really great. I'll show you here.
Yeah,
they're really.
It's a series of like.
We'll put it in the show notes. It's really good. But anyway, one of the horrible Nicolas Cage movies is Next. I think that's the one where he can see in the future, but only so many like minutes or something. Yeah. But it's kind of the same thing where it's like he uses that ability to like get out of like weird situations where it's like, oh, he knows it's going to happen because it's kind of already happened before for him, so he can like do all these different things. But in that movie, like he like succeeds, or like the character like gets what they want because they're just clever enough to like, you know, oh, I'll just memorize what it is I need to do and I'll just do it. But yeah, in this movie, like that's not how he like wins. It's not how like, he has to actually like grow and like become a better person to like actually it's interesting. I mean, he does use it to his advantage to like learn all these things and to like know, you know, where to be when to like make a positive difference, but he's not using it like, I don't know, you know what I mean? There's like not just some thing where it's like, oh, if I'm just at this spot at this time, then it'll just work.
It's not mechanical.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And he didn't know that it would work. He just did it because he just was going to do it. Yeah. And then it worked out for him.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the quotes that sticks in my mind, they asked, I think they were interviewing J.J. Abrams, and they were talking about, you know, what do you think makes a good movie? And the thing that stands out in my mind is he said, when the character, actually I think it was a Charlie Rose interview, he said when a character basically starts off at one place, and if that character was to go to sleep and wake up with the person they want to be, if a movie is about that journey, that in his mind is what makes a good movie. If you look at a number of his movies, you know, I know you don't like the new Star Trek, but you know, they put Kirk kind of through that, where he starts off as kind of a jerk or just not living up to his full potential or whatever. And by the end of the movie, maybe story aside, but the goal is that, he ends up being the captain of the Enterprise, and he ends up kind of growing into that bigger picture. And here, I think that's one of those things where whether he realizes it or not, Phil wants to become a better person, and it takes him a very, very long time to pull it off.
Apparently 40 years.
Right. But at the end, you like Steve said, you genuinely believe that like he's actually become a better person, and he had to do all the work to get there, and he actually had to become. It wasn't just like getting the goal. It was like he went through the whole journey of like doing things better, and as a result, at the end, he ended up at this other place.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome.
So, anyway,
it's a great movie.
Yeah, fantastic movie. All right, I think it's it.
I think so.
Great. See you next time.
Are you on the Groundhog Day like Wikipedia page about the day itself?
Oh yes, that's probably the problem. Okay. Oh yeah, this is way better. Okay. So
especially the insurance.
Yes,
salesman guy.
Okay, so
Phil Connor.
Phil. Okay, so last time we did the video bumper, I think you were just super tired, and you were like staring at the corner. It looked like somebody had like hypnotized you, which was horrible. And I was looking at the camera, but I also had like a weird look on my face, so it looked like Justin was like.
So we're gonna do.
Yeah. This week we're reviewing Groundhog Day. Spoilers. We're gonna do spoilers.
Yes.
Groundhog Day. Maybe I should do that. This week we're reviewing Groundhog Day. We're going to start off with a no spoiler review and then do a full discussion after. Is that right?
I don't know.
I'm trying to think of what we said last time. Okay. This week we're reviewing Groundhog Day, and we're going to. That sounds horrible.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah, let's not do that.
No, let's not do that. All right. So as a thank you to our audience for helping us get to 75 subscribers on YouTube. Why are you laughing? You can't do that to me. I thought I did something goofy. Okay, all right.
He was just looking at you.
It looked like he was. Okay.
I thought I didn't want to be staring off into space.
Oh, okay. Groundhog Day.